anxiety kicked in whenever I was like, man, I'm alone, I'm different, and the world's going to hell. Mm-hmm. That's what it felt like. And it's just, it starts with one thing. And
That's brutal.
The world's going
downhill.
I thought I'd sing y'all a song.
Ooh.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Maybe not. Maybe I'll just think about it.
Why? I want you to sing a song.
Mm-hmm.
You know who does sing?
Who?
Not me.
You do sing.
Katie sings.
Katie sings.
Katie sings.
Like, you do sing, though.
No, not really. I try to sing, but I don't, sing, you know? Katie sings.
Well, I bless your heart. If I sing.
I've heard it.
Well,
it's good stuff.
Dad likes throwing a little bit of Southern gospel.
There's a little twang, for
He
sure.
has to tap his foot a little bit, and it's really good if you add in the fiddle.
You gotta have a fiddle.
Yeah. So, if you don't know, Katie's here. This is Katie. Her last name is the same as ours. We all have the same last
There's a
name.
good reason for that.
Why?
Because she's my daughter-in-law.
Oh. She said hi.
You know, Ruth...
You can use words in here.
I know, Ruth actually texted me the other day. I sent her a picture of them holding Paisley, and she texted me back and was like, you know, we don't have grandbabies at home, so it's a blessing when we get to hold babies. And then she texted me the next morning and was like, I asked Daniel, who's Catherine Brickley? Because when I was in the hospital, she texted me that she was praying for me, and she texted me holding Zach and Katie's baby, and
Oh my gosh.
who is this? Like, it was so sweet, you know, this person I don't know. I know she goes to our church, but, like, who is she? And then he was like, it's probably related to Katie, because I think that was, like, her maiden name. And she was like, yeah, but I just want to know who she is, like, at our church. Like, I want her face.
Mm-hmm.
And then Daniel was like, well, let me see what she sent you and stuff. And he's like, that's Katie.
Katie would be short for Catherine.
She was like, I'm so glad I know who you are now.
That is funny. So you had, automatic caller ID set up?
No, she had never switched my name in her phone.
Oh, when she still didn't remember it was you?
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I guess that's what it was. Yeah, I don't know.
That's awesome. Well, so we just had our amazing women's conference this weekend.
Nobody invited me.
I'm sorry.
I felt hurt.
I'm sorry.
That is sad.
We're not being inclusive the way that we should be.
I'm glad I wasn't invited then.
You would have had fun.
Yeah.
You'd have had fun.
Well, sure.
You'd have probably had
sure.
the best journal there.
Probably so. I'd be very creative.
All the
with my
ribbons.
journal,
It would be
yeah.
crafty and cute, and he would have been very competitive in the games.
Oh, yes.
And man, the most competitive, there were two. Number one, this girl right here. She was really mad at me because.
Did you cheat?
She
No.
did. She
cheated.
did. She did.
Listen, I was in charge of one of the games, and one night I did it real late. I put together the slides, and so we were playing a version of America Says. So it said L, and then it was who Jesus says I am. So it was supposed to be loved. Well, I put an extra blank space, and Katie was like, loved only has 5 letters, not 6, so that doesn't even count.
No. I was saying it has to be lovely because loved, that's too short. And then the other team got the point. And so all of our whole section was like, but love doesn't fit. There's so many spaces.
Yeah.
And it was too short for the spaces.
Who counted it
And so
right?
then she said, well, don't pay attention to any of the spaces. We're like, the spaces threw us all off.
Okay, but to be fair, the game before y'all did win, and I was going to say the second most competitive person. Can you guess? Because you know this person pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Second most?
The second most competitive person there.
I don't think I was. I didn't actually participate in the games. I was just, in the crowd.
I thought you were talking about
She
Mary,
was-
Mary
she was
Jane. She's the one that
competitive.
gets on y'all.
Yes, it was Mary Jane. Yeah, no, it was Mary Jane.
I thought you were going to say Savannah.
Second most. Oh, yeah, Savannah. Shout out Savannah. She was pretty
We got to
competitive
get
too.
Savannah in here.
Yeah, we do. She's funny. She just got we live next to Savannah,
Yeah.
and they just got chickens. And
really?
it is so funny. I love watching her videos because she's like, y'all, I'm just a city girl, and I'm trying to. And she's holding her chickens, and she's all dressed cute and holding chickens in her backyard in the city. I think it's awesome.
Well, I was telling Zach today about how she was like, I was trying to compete for the Louis. I wanted the purse. She's like, you didn't win my purse. That's my purse.
Yeah, Ashley brought a big Louis Vuitton purse as one of the games, and she thought she was competing for that. We're like, no, we're not giving you how much? Like $2,000, you think, maybe?
Yeah.
Or something like that? Yeah, not happening.
I did not buy this.
No. And also we didn't give that as a prize. Ashley brought it.
It was her personal purse.
Yeah.
It was her personal purse.
Her personal. They had to like feel what was in the purse and write it down.
Mm-hmm.
But Savannah thought they were playing for the purse.
For the purse.
Right. Ashley's like, no, girl.
Whose
that's my
purse was it?
Ashley.
Ashley's.
Yes. Can we say last names on here?
I know, I was about like,
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Unless we're, trying to throw somebody on the bus or something, then we will.
Yeah. No. Well, besides Mary Jane being competitive, I also liked on Friday night Katie sang, I don't even remember, was it Gratitude that you sang right after your little monologue?
Firm Foundation.
Firm Foundation. Okay. Well, I really liked what you had to say about the character of God and who he is, and how sometimes in our own flesh we get it confused. And so you talked about how God has really shown himself and his character in your life. So could you tell us more about that?
Sure. So with that song, I was saying, like, when that song came out, it was about 2 years ago, and we were going through it.
Yeah.
And in that season, during that, I realized that I had believed lies of the nature of God and who God was. And I was believing that he was a God that would withhold or forsake me, or that he was a God of shame or, of hate, and those are lies. And what I said during the conference was that if they'd gone to our church, I know you were in Genesis and you were talking about being in the garden and how the enemy would love nothing more than for us to believe a lie of our Father, of who he is. And he likes to sandwich those lies in between some truths. So it's believable, and then, it gets you wrapped in it and you believe those lies. And so I was in a season where I was, and I had to get right with, like, who is God to you? And who is he? And so that ultimately, those were not truths, and that he was faithful, and that's his nature, and his nature is good. And not always that he puts and works everything together for good, but that he just is good, and that's just who he is.
And I think that was, that's relatable for anybody, but I really felt touched by it, and I didn't get to tell you personally, but now you know. But I really was, because there's been times where I've questioned it too, and I think in our own flesh we put these fleshly expectations on life and how we think it should be, and when those aren't met, it's easy to blame God and say, like, well, I thought that I had these expectations and you're not meeting them, so you're not who you say you are.
Right.
But in reality, he has a different plan in mind for us than we think, or maybe he's guiding us a different direction, or I think we put these human limitations on a God who's so much bigger than what we could ever imagine.
Right.
And instead of blaming him, we need to maybe look into his perspective of what he could be teaching us.
Right, for sure. Well, I think also, like, when you go back to the garden, it's easy, like, in today's world, it's easy for Eve to be like, well, he's always talking with Adam, or, like, instead of confiding in a snake, she could have gone to the Father.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to believe these lies of when a snake is talking to you, it's, and it's so loud, it feels like, because it aligns with the world.
Yeah.
And if you're not in God's word or talking with God, then it's so easy to get that alignment.
For sure. Well, I think it's funny that we're talking about this. We're just going to keep talking about you like you're not here, Dad. Okay?
It's okay.
Because I was telling him the other day, I have to go back and watch his sermons because I'm with the kids in both services. But I watched the one where he brought up Genesis and how Eve easily believed lies, and even what she said about God was a lie. She was believing a lie about God, and I actually brought that up to him. And I think it's funny that, and what you're referring to, a specific example, I just studied it in school too, which is why it's so cool, because I feel like God has a pattern of bringing things up in your life over and over he wants you to pay attention to them. And so I'm doing history of life in school, and we're talking about Genesis. Well, they brought up this specific example, which I've never heard before Dad's sermon, ever.
Really?
Yes. And then the week after, it comes up in school about how God said not to eat of the tree. And then Eve is talking to the serpent, and she's like, yeah, God said not to touch it.
Right.
And it's like, wait, hold on. God never said that. And
he loves to add things on to make people not be able to do what God gave them to do.
Exactly.
But
I
also,
think-
if she had, oh, go ahead.
Well, he's got all these legalists and everybody out there telling you everything's sin.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not sin. Most things God created for you are good and they're intended for you to enjoy.
Right.
And it's men that want to keep you from enjoying God's creation, not God.
Yeah.
He's a good God.
He is good.
And one of the things I've always, and I think I mentioned this to you this morning maybe, but that's my starting point, and I think it keeps me out of a lot of trouble,
Yeah.
is I just believe God is God.
Mm-hmm.
And so no matter how he is, I don't feel like he's still God.
Yeah.
So I don't need to adjust him, I need to adjust me.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I keep that perspective, it keeps me from believing some of the stuff Satan has to say, because I know that I got Satan to listen to or God.
Yeah.
I've got the world or God.
Yeah, it really is one or the other.
So I want to go. I'm going to God.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
But he's so tricky. He's good at what he does, Satan.
The enemy, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're even, talking about questioning God's character, because we think that we have, like, sometimes we'll get, like, temptations was the sermon this week. And so we get these ideas in the world based off of what even the definition of fun could look like. And it's like, okay, well, we're the ones that are getting misconstrued, because the world, of course, like, Satan is in the world. Satan's the prince of this world. So, of course, it's going to look like that's fun. He's really good at what he does.
Mm-hmm.
But if we believe God, instead of saying, oh, well, you don't want me to have any fun, it's like, okay, actually, he wants to protect you from a lot of things. And that's why he's putting these limitations. You're the one that decided those things are fun. It's not like, and that's just one example.
No, right.
Of getting misconstrued with who God really is. And I think that is obviously one of the biggest issues in our world today, is either not believing in God at all or not understanding his character for who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or even, like, combating the enemy when he comes, staying with the Eve thing, and he says, well, you'll be like God.
Yeah.
But what if she had combated that and said, I already am, I was made in his image.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's with everything. You did this, so you're this. And, that's what the world says. But like what you were talking
That
about
was a
Sunday.
good thought right there, by the way.
That is a good
Thank
thought.
you.
Yeah.
But even on Sunday when you were saying, just because you did something, don't allow the world to identify you as what you've done, or when you've messed up, or when you've fallen into that temptation. Like, you're not those things. You are still a child of God. And I actually told Zach that yesterday morning. I was like, and your dad gets into stuff, and I was just cracking up, even like trying to tell him the story, because you were like, he calls you his special possession. You're like, he calls me special. I was just cracking up. But we were getting tacos, and I was telling him that, and I was like, you're a citizen of heaven, and you're a child of God, and just remembering who your identity is, because it's rooted in him.
Yeah.
And so even when the enemy does try to come, it's like, if you have that identity rooted and secured, and kind of like what we were talking about at the women's conference, like, when you put your trust and your hope in that rock, like, he is your firm foundation.
Absolutely.
There's no slippery slope. There's no, things will come and the temptations will come, but if you cling to him, then it's
Rain came, wind blew.
exactly.
And that's the reality of life.
Yeah,
But
and
I
it does.
I find it amazing that the first two places he comes to you, there are things that some churches adopt.
Like
Because,
what?
well, like, number one, he comes and says, look, there's so many things you can't do. So you get these groups that are identified by, we can't do this, and we can't do that, and we can't do this, and we can't do. Well, God created everything good,
Yeah.
and then he put limitations.
Sure.
Well, everything in every tree was good fruit. But then he comes along and says, but don't eat of that one.
Yeah.
Well, you can eat all the rest of them, but don't eat of that one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can touch a bunch of them too, but probably ought not to touch poison ivy. But is that because God hates me?
No. It's because
It's because he knows poison ivy will hurt me.
Yeah. This could be a really difficult question.
Uh-oh.
Why do you think God would put the tree there? Because I know that's what some people might be wondering. Why would God even put it there?
I think you have to have a choice to love God.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the choice to love God, then it's not real love.
Right.
If I can't be forced into something, and it'd be real.
Yeah, and that's
So-
true in relationships here on earth too.
Right.
So,
Now, I can't make your mother love me.
Yeah.
I'm irresistible, of course.
yeah.
Yeah.
So people that wonder, well, if God was so good, then why wouldn't he just let us all go to heaven? Well, because true love is a choice. And the whole reason you're talking about being created in the image of God. Well, the whole reason we were created in the image of God is so that we could have a relationship with him, because he wanted the closest thing. We're the closest creation that can have a relationship with him. We are able to think. We have a soul. We're the closest relation to God here on earth, and the reason he created us is for a relationship with himself. That's not a true relationship if it's not a choice. Then we're
Right.
just his little minions. It's
This
like
whole
an animal.
this whole deal's about relationships.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess those up.
Yeah.
It's about vertical and horizontal relationships.
Yeah.
Love God, love other people. That sounds trite, maybe because we say it so many times, but the deepest truths of life lie in my vertical and horizontal relationships.
Yeah.
So I want to guard them,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I want to guard them with grace and be a grace giver.
Yeah.
Because that's who God is. Like you were talking about, I believe the lie. Well, I believe God wasn't good. Well, God's a God of grace. He's a God who's so good he sends his son to die on a cross for me
Yeah.
to pay for a sin that I did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, too, that, after the sin in the garden, if we're going back to the beginning, ever since then, choosing God has been more difficult and more difficult because of sin coming in. And our view of God and his character, again, is kind of blinded. And so what would you say to the person that thinks, like, well, I don't know about this whole God thing. Like, why would he do that? Why would he give us a choice? Why would he allow sin? Why all of it?
Go ahead. I want you to answer. Well, I'd like to hear your answer. I mean, I've got all these answers been stockpiled for 100 years.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what we just said. He's a jealous God. He's a relational God, and if there wasn't a choice, then for one, it's not as special, right? And it's not as real.
Yeah.
If you don't have that choice to choose him, and it's not just I was saved, so it's a daily choice.
Yes.
Right? And
yes. It's a die to self everyday choice.
For sure, yes. And I know, like, another big question people always ask is, like, well, if he's this great loving God, then why does he allow bad things to happen? Not just sin, but, like, bad things to happen to good people or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
And it goes down to, like, his plans for us, and, that his thoughts are not our thoughts and his ways are not our ways, and they're higher than ours and they're better than ours. And so I feel like it just all boils down to, well, for one, like, we were in need of a savior.
Absolutely.
Right? And we were never going to do it on our own. And so there's that. And then I just think, again, because of the relational aspect of it.
Absolutely. Well, and at the end of the day, like, the people who wonder, is it worth it? Like, is it really worth my time? I don't know. I always say, you don't know till you try. So you might as well try it out. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And if it's changed your life, you're welcome. Your life has changed for the better because of Jesus. Why sit here and say, well, I don't think it's going to be worth it? Just try it.
Well, also, if we're wrong, we've just wasted time, right?
Yeah.
Going to church or singing a different genre of music. We've just wasted moments and time. But if we're right, that's an eternity,
Absolutely. And honestly, even if you were wrong, which we're not, but even if we were, like, we could waste our time doing so many other things.
Right.
You know, like, either way, I don't understand the thought of it wasting time by serving the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think
I think I've seen him do too many things.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Through the years. And I've probably got a T-shirt for just about every kind of problem you can have.
Yeah.
Probably just because I have to deal with people all the time that have them.
Yeah.
But I will honestly look back at all of them and say God has grown me through every heartache. There's things I don't want to do again.
Right.
But I'm glad I went through it because I learned something from it. God made me better than I was before I walked into it.
Yeah.
And he's still got a long way to go. But
Yeah.
That's what me and Zach have been really talking about that a lot lately, about just hardships of your life and seasons you go through, but like how they strengthen you. And yeah, we've been talking about that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Even today, just so funny.
I think that's one of the reasons we got to give other people grace.
Yeah.
People need room to mess up
Absolutely.
and find grace on the other side of it, and realize, hey, we love you because we've messed up too.
Yeah.
And we needed somebody standing there when we went through, and needed grace on the other side of it. But that's who God is. That's the character of God.
Yeah.
He's a God of grace.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I was looking back at our YouTube and I was like, what's the most viewed podcast video? And it's church hurt. And I was thinking, that says something. It's not because, all of a sudden the people that watched us were like, ooh, this video is so good, I need to watch it over and over.
Right.
It's because people struggle with that. Because like we're talking about the character of God, like sometimes we're getting blinded too by his people, because his people can hurt us, especially in the church. That's the one place where you should feel safe and at home. And so what would you say to the person that's like, well, I'm staying away, I'm happier away from that because, or even you, because it's scary and I don't want to go there because people are judgmental?
I would honestly say I'm sorry you've ever been hurt by any church. Churches have people.
Or even the church people.
And people, a lot of times people get it wrong. And I'm a pro at that. I've been hurt many times.
Yeah.
By the church. I mean, if you don't believe that, just pastor one for about 40 years.
Yeah.
You'll find out the church can deliver you a lot of heartache. But I would also say there's something you have to offer. And it's not necessarily what you're going to be getting out of it, but it's what you can put into it. You can change that dynamic by going in and understanding, look, I got hurt here. We don't need to be doing that. So you bring that to the table and
hopefully
and make
change.
a difference. Yeah, church is more about what you can put into it than what you can get out of it anyway.
I think also if we went to a church where there was, no one wants to be hurt, and I don't think that's to our core. I don't think that's anyone's intention.
Yeah.
If we're really here for the right reasons, right? But it does happen because we are a broken people, and no one within these walls has arrived,
Exactly.
right? And if we had, then there really, again, back to your question, there wouldn't be a need for a savior, or
Well, the church
we are
is
broken, and
also-
we do need that.
The church is a hospital, and not everything's going to go perfect at the hospital. Not everyone's going to leave feeling healed, But keep coming, because if you give up, you're giving up on your soul, Well, I mean, not completely. I'm not saying you have to go to church to be saved. I'm just saying you're giving up on maybe life-giving or soul-giving friends or people just because one person hurt you. And I will say, it is possible. I have been more hurt by church people than people out in the world. And I think that's because we also have a higher expectation for them. And I don't know, something about it. Satan really loves to stir it up where he knows it hurts.
Well, somebody said a while ago, I don't think people meant to. Tragically, I think sometimes they do.
Yeah.
I've seen people that were, and honestly, I think it's because within the church, you have people who really know the Lord, and you have people who are just doing religion.
Routine, right?
Yeah. And I will say this, I don't think I've ever been hurt by anybody that I thought really knew the Lord.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because those people have experienced grace. They got the Holy Spirit of God living inside of them. But when we open the church door every Sunday morning, we want everybody to come. And we invite everybody, which means I'm going to get that person who's been walking with the Lord for years and they're genuine. And I'm going to get that one that doesn't have a clue.
But that's where they belong.
Right.
Absolutely.
We want them to come.
Right.
Absolutely.
But you've got to realize it may be that one that hurts you and not that other one.
I honestly think too that even like it can even look like a person who has come to church for years, even their whole life, and maybe even that person isn't genuine.
Right.
So you know,
They're just religious.
you can't assume. Yeah, can't assume anything.
Yeah, but it'd be. I don't want anybody to be hurt when they walk in our church, but it's not going to happen. There's going to be some. I mean, we got a guy now runs around telling people they got pull your hat off, and he's the church police. We don't need church police.
Yeah, I like the church police.
That's your mother calling me.
Oh, you should answer.
Hello. Hi. We're doing a podcast, so you're online.
Put her on speaker.
Oh.
Okay, I'm leaving work.
Okay.
And
You're leaving.
I need to run by Mardell's.
You're going to run by Mardell's?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
I was
but
gonna ask,
don't spend money. Don't spend no money.
okay. And then I was going to ask you if you want me to send you the list of the few things we need for supper tonight.
By that, she means she wants you to go
For
to
you
the
to go to
store.
the store.
Yes, ma'am. I can't think of anything I'd rather have than the list.
Perfect. Good husband. Okay. Well, y'all enjoy.
All right. Love you.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd really be lost without the list, though. So
I got to have the list. Yeah.
Gotta have it. Well, I honestly think that, Dad has done a really good job of showing his kids what to do with that hurt or, even believing lies about the character of God, since we're talking about that. What do you tell your kids? They're so young still.
Right.
So, but I believe that they've still been hurt because it starts at a young age. Like, do your kids ever come home and feel defeated in anything, not just church?
Yeah, they do. And Harper was on, I guess, last week.
Yeah.
And she has a lot of issues with like sleep, like insomnia and going to
Really?
sleep.
I actually never knew that.
Yeah, if she was excited about the podcast, she wouldn't go to bed the night before.
Oh.
Like anything, it could be super minor, it could be something huge, and we say, well, can I watch TV for 20 minutes or can I fall asleep? And then we got to the point where I kept telling Zach, like, we can't keep using these different crutches because
Yeah.
and that it works for adults too because we get a crutch that works for us, but like these crutches don't last,
Well,
and
not
so
only that, but even me versus Harper, like, we're not that far apart in age, but even at her age, like, I didn't have all these crutches available.
Right.
We live in a media crazed
For sure.
world where that crutch is easy, especially social media. It's right at your fingertips, and I feel like a lot of people. This is going down a different topic, but we might as well. That creates anxiety. Because you
Yes.
always have that crutch,
And
like
she
you're talking
is. I'll
about.
say she does become very anxious over things. And so me and Zach were like, we're done with the TV. We're done, with
Stormy snoring.
with like, she was like, well, then maybe I could do like a melatonin gummy or something. And I'm like, well, that's gonna mess with your hormones, and we're not gonna,
Yeah.
and everyone does their own thing, and there's no shame there or whatever.
Yeah.
But for us, I was like, we need to be praying about this because if you're like, God cares about the little things too, and
Yeah.
even if it's just going to sleep when you want to go to sleep. And she does. I saw your message to her the other day about, do you sleep with an eye mask on? She sleeps with an eye mask on.
I love it.
Like the
I love
little
it. She
sleep
sent me a picture with her little eye mask, like mom.
sequins, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time I go to bed with Tonto.
Yeah,
If I
my
fall
mom
asleep
does
with that, I've done it before. Because Zach has one because when he's on nights.
Oh,
And
yes.
so, like, the other day, he was watching a show, and I was like, I'm so tired. After the women's conference, like, I'm so tired. Can I use that? And he's like, sure. I'll go to sleep with it perfectly right here. I'll wake up, and it's, But she wakes up, like, flawless in the
Yes.
mornings. It's, like, perfectly here. She's like, like a princess.
Aw.
Like, do her little stretch. But, yeah, so we have to really make it such a habit to where she doesn't think about a crutch or the TV or her phone or it's like, okay, I'm dealing with this, I'm struggling with this, what do? I go straight to God.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we've instilled. Thankfully we haven't really dealt with
And that's hard
a ton of
enough
much
for
other
adults.
church hurt, but
Yeah.
as far as little anxieties and things like that, we make a big effort to pray about things first in our house just because we know if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be him. So
Yeah. Yeah. Dad, do you remember any of my little anxieties growing up? Because I know I had some. So,
Yeah, I remember.
So you as a parent, what what did you do? I mean, I know, but I want you to say it.
One of the things that we always did was we prayed with you about it.
Yeah.
You know, and tried to point you to the goodness of God in all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And back to the Word. Normally, if you're dealing with an anxiety, we started out this thing talking about believing a lie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, if I have an anxiety or depression or something, there's a lie in there somewhere that Satan's fed me.
Yeah.
And so we start looking for that and say, what is the lie?
And man, our
With
minds
you, a
are
lot
so
of times
powerful.
it was that you would see your friends doing things that were upsetting you, that you thought were hurting them.
Yeah.
And making bad decisions, and you just took it all to heart and wore it. And the lie would be that God doesn't love them,
The truth.
and that God's not going to work in their life.
Well, the truth was that compassion was there,
Mm-hmm.
but then the mind's a powerful thing. So it would be like, oh my gosh, the world's gonna end. Next thing you know, because it's like, yeah, it did hurt, but
Mm-hmm.
I have grown, and you're doing your kids' heart. You're doing Harper such a favor, by praying with her and speaking that truth over her life of who God is. Because I don't know how anybody who doesn't know the Lord gets past anxiety. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible says the truth will set you free, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
And
that's
truth is a big deal, because remember, the enemy's a liar. So how's he going to affect us?
Yeah.
Lie.
Yeah.
And you can see people, I mean, literally in mental institutions, over believing a lie.
Right.
Well, yeah, because it all starts in the mind. I'm looking at this verse because I love it, and it has to do with God's character and how he's good to us. Hold on.
But I think it's hard to, like what you were saying with your friends, because then it's, if you're seeing these people that you're so close to
Yeah.
do like certain things, and it's hard because, for one, it's you want to hold them accountable, but then it's two, it's like, well, you're doing that by association,
Yes.
even though you're not.
Yes.
You know,
it is.
and that's hard.
As I've gotten older, it's a little better, but when, especially my transition from private school to public school, like private school, that stuff wasn't allowed at all. It was such a small environment. And then
And it was hidden.
Yes.
If it was happening.
Yes. And then public school, like I did pretty well, I feel like, for such a big switch up, but even then, like, I was like, I feel so alone, even, because I would think I found a good friend who was doing the same things as me, and it's like every time I felt I was making it too much about myself. And instead of being like, man, I really, really want that person to know Jesus, and I really need to be patient with them, it's almost like the anxiety kicked in whenever I was like, man, I'm alone, I'm different, and the world's going to hell. That's what it felt like. And it's just, it starts with one thing. And
That's brutal.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really believe that, but like that's how big it was in my mind.
Yeah, that is hard.
But I love the verse about it's Matthew 6:26, and it's look at the birds. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you far more valuable to him than they are? And that's just such a good verse. Like, if God's going to feed the birds, he's going to take care of us. And if we believe in his character and who he is, we can conquer anything.
That is good. I was talking to Zach today. I think we were watching a podcast whenever we were on this topic, and he was doing something. I think I caught him off guard because he wasn't really like paying attention, and I was like, I think that's why you've disappointed me so much. And he was like, oh, what? He's like, what did I do? Like, what? And I was like, no, because it was talking about like relationships and how we get that vertical and horizontal mixed up, like you were talking about a second ago, and about like when we move Jesus from his rightful place, then it doesn't matter how good he is.
Yeah.
Because if he's not where his rightful place is in our lives, then we're not going to see that goodness, because we've misplaced, or we've taken it away from him, even though that's not ours to take, and it's never going to be taken.
Yeah.
When I was telling Zach with that, though, I said, like, I think for a while, because of things that I went through and I suffered, and when we got married, I had such expectations that I was like, this is going to be my fulfillment, or, you know, like,
Yeah.
I told him, I was like, I think for a while I made you almost like my God. Like, I put you
Yeah.
in God's place and God's second, and I think that's why, you know, there were so many disappointments there for a while, because you're never going to add up to God. You know,
Yeah.
not you as a person, you're disappointing, but when you're compared to
That's why you
God,
disappoint me.
but I was like, but in comparison to God, like, you know, we're never going to measure up.
No,
and so I
you're
said,
right.
that's
I've done that
hard.
too, where I put that expectation on a person.
Yes.
And then it's like, well, if I would focus on the Lord first, and
Right.
I've seen this in my own life already, like, if I will focus on the Lord first instead, everything else falls into place, and then I
Right.
end up being a lot less disappointed.
Right. I'm like, God, why is XYZ happening? Like, or, you know, me and my husband are dealing with this. Why are we not as good as this time, or, you know, as whatever? And it's like, okay, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe if you actually had your eyes on me
Yeah.
and not
We-
keeping them on your
we end
husband
up
and what I need to change in
idolizing.
your husband, and, you know, all
Yeah.
these things. Maybe you look at me and let me work in you.
And we end up idolizing
It's
the very
not
person we're
fair
disappointed
to
in.
expect a person to be your all in all.
Right. It's
Right.
not.
It's really
And they
not.
will never measure up, you
Right.
know? So they will
can't.
leave
They're
you
not-
disappointed.
They weren't designed for it. They're made in the image
Exactly.
of God. They're not God.
I
Right.
hope nobody ever has that expectation for me, because I will fail, because I'm not God.
You're probably going to go through a time when somebody has that expectation of you.
I think in ministry alone, it happens.
I think honestly I maybe have had that expectation. It hasn't really been super painful yet, you know? But yes, in ministry it has happened, now that I'm thinking about it.
I will say it's kind of funny, because Zach, myself, and the Liaos, at the beginning of this year, we were going to do the Bible in 6 months. And so we were on that.
Read it.
Read it, yes. And we were going to act it out. We were going to do like skits and act it out. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you never know nowadays. I live in a different world.
No.
I was taking you so seriously. I was like, that's so different. I was
Yeah,
really
no, Zach
expecting
and Austin, they were fighting over who got to be Jesus. It was a whole, no. No, we're going to read the Bible.
Austin has
And,
more hair, so.
Hey, what?
I said Austin has more hair, so.
Yeah, he does. Naturally, yeah. No, and Zach was in the shower, and he came out, and he was like, what's the matter with you? And I was like, I've been on this verse for like 20 minutes now. And he's like, yeah, the Bible can be real hard to understand, you know? And I'm like, no. Let me read this verse to you. And then he's like, well, like, what's wrong with it first? Like, tell me what you're not understanding first. I'm like, it's just a real heavy verse. And he was like, okay. And I was like, do you think you're like really, you know, like leading this family? And he's like, what? And I'm like, do you think you're doing your hardest to like seek Christ first and put him number one and whatever? And he's like, are you saying like I could do better? And I was like, maybe. And he was like, what is the verse? I need to know the verse. And I was like, this verse says that you are God's glory and woman is man's glory.
I saw that today.
And I was like,
Wow.
I'm reading all these commentary. I was on that verse for almost a whole month. Like, I
Really?
was looking at all kinds of stuff. Because I was like, there's just such depth to it. You know, I was telling him, I said, if,
And that's in
because,
Genesis, isn't it?
no,
okay.
1 Corinthians.
Oh, okay.
It's 1 Corinthians. But I was telling him, I said, okay, if, I said, so it all boils down to, like, it's God first, and then, you know, the husband, and then the wife, and the kids. And so I was like, if we are all doing and partaking in our rightful places and putting God first, and you leading the family, and me submitting to your leadership when you're submitting to God, I said, so if you are submitting to Christ, and you're the glory of, you know, of God, and I'm the glory of man, but like I'm here for you, so I'm like what you're giving to God because I'm submitting.
Struggling
I
with that.
was struggling. I was
This
like, what is this? Like even voicing it now.
I thought God was good.
I was telling him, I said,
not fair.
I was like, so if all I am is the glory of what you give to God, you better be giving it all to God, because I'm not going to be some mediocre
That's right.
glory.
Yeah.
He was like,
That's right.
oh, okay. And I said, but you know, it really does boil down to the oneness, you know, because we're one, you know, we're supposed to be one. So if he is not submitting his all to Christ and allowing Christ to lead him, then my submission to Zach isn't really going to do much for the kingdom.
Right.
If
Pick
he's
'em
not,
well, ladies. Pick
if
'em
he's
well.
not submitting to Christ. And so that verse had me, oh my gosh, like I just kept telling him, like, I'm man's glory. Like, It was like, wow.
I'm gonna need you to step
But
it up.
I think you're onto something with the oneness, though, because
Absolutely.
you go back to Genesis 1:27 then.
Right.
They were both created in the image of God, which is the reflection of the glory of God.
Right. And it was saying that too. It was saying, and women was made from the rib, not from the head to be above, not from the foot to be below, but from the rib to be created to be an equal, but still as helpmate and to submit to your spouse while they lead and submit to Christ.
Right.
I'm telling y'all, it's not going to matter as much to y'all, but all of these concepts are literally in my textbook that I'm reading to, like, this week. This exact
That's good.
stuff about what you just said and about the stuff earlier of Eve and all that. Yeah, it's crazy. Being made in God's image. It's pretty cool. But, like we said, God tends to bring those things back up. Do y'all have any last things to say?
I've been kind of quiet the whole time, I guess.
Yes, it's been one of your more.
I want to know, have you heard of, I think it's kind of like a new age thing. You've probably heard of it.
I wanna know.
I'm like, you've heard of it.
Oh, this is
But
good.
have you ever heard of, a passcode with God? Do you know what I'm talking about? How you, you pray and you're like, and if this is if this is your will, then
yes.
show me a yellow butterfly.
Yeah.
Or show me a, rainbow rose.
A sign.
Yeah.
Just some sort of sign.
But
A fleece.
right.
That's what us old timers call it. A fleece.
Right.
Like Gideon. Yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you this about your son.
Oh,
you
God.
told me not to talk poorly about him, but
You talking about? We threw him under the bus last week. Go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah, about
with the lottery ticket.
Well, Harper threw him under the bus.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he bought the ticket. It was that they won $5,000. That's what
It was
she
supposed to be
gonna-
a joke.
a
Oh,
prank.
okay.
Zach said
Yeah.
it wasn't a lie. It was a prank. They got
Harper
that wrong.
was saying that she's bad at lying.
Yeah, but it was much better the way it came off
Oh,
in
for
here.
sure, for sure.
Yeah, it was.
So, anyways, we were driving, and even Harper's like, Mom, I just want to let you know before you scream, there is a rainbow in the sky. So please don't scream because then Dad's going to freak out and Dad's driving. So if you could not scream, there is a rainbow in the
There is
sky.
a
I just want to
rainbow.
let you know there's a rainbow
That's
in the sky.
awesome.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so there was a rainbow the other day, and I told Zach, I was like, okay. And I had my phone. I'm like, it's a double rainbow. And Zach's like, oh, cool, whatever.
It's a passcode.
And I'm like, no, just a long time ago. Or even still, sometimes I will pray, and not even that I need confirmation, but just it's kind of like I see you, And I was like, I would get a rainbow, or there'd be a rainbow, and it would just feel like this thing between me and God, right? And so, anyways, Zach was like, oh, what'd you pray about today? And I was like, well, you don't want to know. And he was like, oh, tell me. And I was like, well, it was something I prayed about last night. And he was like, oh, tell me. And so I told him, and he was like, whoa, well, that was deep, And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm kind of sick to my stomach because I feel like now God's saying, yes, that's what you need to do. And now it's actually carrying that out. And he was like, I'm not going to argue with God, but, before you prayed that last night, did you check the weather? You know it's going to rain? Because, rainbows do sometimes happen with the rain.
With clouds, yeah.
She's all
Yeah.
checking the weather. It's going to rain tomorrow. Okay, God, if I'm supposed to do this, give me a sign.
Yeah, literally.
And the sign should be that it rains.
yeah. Make it a little bit cloudy.
That's funny.
But yeah, it was funny. And I was like, he's like, I'm not going to argue with God. You do what God's telling you to do. But also, it
The
was
forecast tells
forecasted
you.
last night that it was going to rain. Potential rainbows do happen.
Well, I think
with
another
it.
time we should have maybe a part 2 to the podcast about over spiritualizing. Not that you were.
No,
I'm
but
saying in
yes.
general
Yes.
because I know what you're saying. Sometimes we tend to. That is an issue, especially with my generation. I feel like is sometimes we over spiritualize. Not that Katie's is. She was just. It's her and God's thing. Is what she was saying.
Well, then I told Zach, I was like, then I'm like, if this is the woman, let her drop water for me and the camel. And
Yes.
I'm like, let me drop water for you and your camel. I'm like, was this the woman, God, or is that just coincidence? Give me a sign. Well, was that really
He did
a sign?
go to a place where women came to draw water.
Right.
For
So,
sure.
I think there's that issue,
No, but I've
too.
definitely had those moments, specific moments where I'm like, okay, Lord, well, you know what? If this doesn't work out like this, then I know that you're heading me this direction. And then it doesn't work out like that. And I'm like, okay, so are you sure? Maybe I'm over spiritualizing when really he's told me, no, I want you to go this direction.
Yeah, that is hard.
Well, I feel like this has been a good conversation.
No, I do too. I hadn't talked much. Makes it a better conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think what we said was good. But if you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, since you can now, since we don't have kids on here. They turned them off last week because
I was wondering.
kids. And hit the bell so you never miss a video from us. Thanks for joining in on our conversation. Make sure to go out to love God and love others. Bye.
I never can remember hit the bell.
Hit the bell.
Yeah.